Hello there! Welcome back to Star Wars in a Galaxy, watching all of Star Wars we didn't get our hands on. We are back, baby! We are back. Jacob and I are finally back recording. A lot happened since we've been gone. We were both away. I got COVID, which was very fun for me. But no, we took some time off, but we're ready to get back into Star Wars in a Galaxy. We're ready to bring back the show in a big way. This is episode 83. Welcome back to Star Wars in a Galaxy. Watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. I'm Eli.
Did we already do that? I'm Jacob.
You know what? I probably just had a brain fart and didn't.
Oh no, sorry. It's
anyway.
all good.
We're doing what Jacob and I are calling season 10 and a half of Star Wars in a Galaxy. These are not enough episodes for a full season. It's going to be 2 episodes we're releasing. One this week, and I think one next week. But Jacob and I are stalling for time because we don't want to cover Bad Batch Season 2 when it comes out. We want to give it some time. We're not a news show, and so we don't want to cover Bad Batch Season 2 that soon. So what we're doing right now is Jacob and I watched 2 of the 6 Visions shorts that take place either before or during the Imperial period. Now there was a bit of a mix-up between this, and we'll explain this as we go along, as to when I thought one of them was and when it actually took place. But we watched The Village Bride and The Elder, episodes 4 and 7 of Star Wars Visions. And if you're not aware, Star Wars Visions is a bunch of Japanese anime studios got together under Lucasfilm. Lucasfilm gave them a bunch of money and a bunch of equipment, and their sound libraries and all that kind of stuff, and voice actors, and they were just like, create a Star Wars thing. George Lucas was inspired by Japanese filmmaking, especially the works of Akira Kurosawa, and Lucasfilm wanted to pay it forward, and so they did, by allowing these Japanese studios to make whatever Star Wars they wanted to be. The canonicity it's not canon. I like to treat it as canon. What do you think, Jacob? Do you regard Visions as canon? How canon do you regard Visions as?
I definitely do not regard it as canon, but I'm also at a place in my experience of Star Wars and in my enjoyment of Star Wars where does it really matter whether it's canon or not? There's so much good canon stuff. There's so much good Legends, EU, what have you, that I think to some extent the distinguishing between the two isn't always the most useful, at least to me.
Absolutely. I get
beyond
that.
simply like thinking about, okay, when did this happen? Like continuity. I feel like beyond that, there's not really a lot in it. But I would definitely consider this part of something separate outside of the main continuity. But I mean I haven't made up my mind. Like again, when it came out, I did not watch all these shorts. I have watched The Village Bride before. I had not watched The Elder before. So once I watch all of them, if they're making more of these, so I definitely reserve the right to change my mind. But to me, I would just ask, like, not to be like a smart ass, but just like, why does it matter to begin with? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a completely
That's my
fair question, and it doesn't matter. What matters is canon is what you think is canon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody regards their own canon. I think of certain things as canon to my Star Wars universe that aren't necessarily Disney approved canon, and that's fine because it's in your head.
I think everybody has some version. Personally, I have this idea that anything that is not directly contradicted by something in the new canon, anything that's not directly contradicted, is still a part of it. That's how I see it. That's how I like it.
But speaking of that, of Vision Season 2, I was actually at the panel where Vision Season 2 was announced. I was lucky to be at that panel at Celebration. It was a freaking incredible panel. I love being there. I saw some great content creators there. Heard a lot about the backstory of creating Visions, and it was such an interesting panel, and I really got to learn more about the behind the scenes of Visions. But Jacob, let me address the elephant in the room, or at least the biggest. So this episode was supposed to be the two shorts of Visions that took place before the Imperial takeover.
Yeah,
I don't know if you noticed, but one of them did not take place before the Imperial takeover.
yeah. The
So
Village Bride
the
was
Village Bride
definitely in the
didn't,
Empire era.
because you can see a destroyed Imperial probe droid. That's my bad. I read somewhere on the internet that it took place before the Empire, and I believed it. And then I saw the Imperial probe droid, and I'm like, oh shit, it doesn't. So I guess the Elder is the only one that takes place before the Empire. Uh, but given that it takes place early in the timeline, should we start with the Elder?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's
Yeah,
the opposite way that I watched it, so it should be
yeah, me too.
interesting.
Um,
So in the Elder, a Jedi Master and a Padawan are traveling through hyperspace in the Outer Rim. The Master detects a disturbance in the Force, which leads them to land on a remote planet. Um, they explore the planet, and while on the planet, they find an Elder Darksider. Um, you find an Elder Darksider. This Elder Darksider injures the Padawan in hopes of luring in the Jedi Master, which works. The Master comes and defeats the Elder Sith, I guess you could say, even though he denies being a Sith. But he defeats the Elder Sith and helps his apprentice recover from his injuries. And then it kind of ends with kind of a monologue from the master about age and touches on a lot of things. Touches on age. It touches on power. It's very interesting. But it's very short and sweet.
I first of all, I think we should note all the studios that participated in,
Yeah,
because again, these are different studios who did every short. I mean, some of
yeah,
them, I think, one or two of them did two shorts,
yeah,
but Studio Trigger, which I believe also did the twins.
yeah. They did the
Um,
twins and they did this one.
oh, that's great, because the twins, for those of you who don't know, is my personal favorite of the Vision shorts. I love all of them to a certain degree, but the twins is excellent, and I love it, and it makes me so sad that takes place like after original trilogy, because it means we're not going to get to it for a long time. Um, but yeah, so Trigger Studios did The Elder. Um, so yeah, so
Directed by oh
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. Directed by Masahiko Otsuka. The score was from Michiru Oshima. I quite like the scores, so
Yeah,
I thought it's worth. I think it's worth pointing out
yeah.
the scores as well.
I feel like, well, give me a second. I was meaning to take note of the voice actors for this because I feel like there's somebody famous voices the master, because I know James Hong is the elder. James Hong, for those of you who don't know, voices as Morgan in Star Wars Rebels. So he voices the elder. And I believe who voices the I oh okay. Dan is voiced by Dan the Padawan is voiced by Jordan Fisher, and the Master is voiced by David Harbour. I think that's it. Yeah, yeah. David Harbour.
Nice.
The Master Tatchin Crosser. Um, and so Visions does really well. Um, I love the Jedi's depiction, regardless of the short. This happens in the Village Bride. This happens in the Elder. This happens in the Ninth Jedi. This happens in so many of them. That the Jedi are viewed not as this order that's bringing peace and justice to the galaxy and working on alongside the Republic and all that kind of stuff, but as like there are these nomadic samurai.
Yeah,
Obviously this is inspired a lot by Japanese culture, but like there's these nomadic samurai who they don't. There's no order. It's just they go around helping people.
yeah.
They
That's
have the
definitely
power of the
the
Force and they help people.
yeah. Very very interesting change from what we've seen. For sure.
Yeah, and I really dig it. I really dig it. Um,
I dig it as well. I think it's great. Just getting into this. Yeah, I thought that starting off, I thought that the robes, I don't know, maybe to put it in the timeline. I thought that the robes that they were wearing, at least the way that they were presented in the first scene in the ship, really reminded me of the High Republic robes, with the lighter colors and the golden, more golden beige accents. Did you pick up on that or what?
I didn't, but that doesn't surprise me because if you think about so the High Republic we're looking at is around 200 years, 230 years before Yavin. Um, we know that they're going back in Phase 2, where they're actually going backwards in time. So we're going around 330 years BBY. But I think that's the furthest back they're going. So if
Okay.
this is at the latest, I think probably 600 or so. So like we're
There's a big stretch
nearing,
where it could be.
yeah, we're nearing the point. It's still hundreds of years away, but I could see the transition between the Elder and then the High Republic and then the Old Republic or the Republic that we see in the prequel era. So
Yeah,
I like that continuity there. No, good point.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I think another quote if we're on the topic of the Jedi, the seeds of misfortune when in peaceful soil can be easy to overlook.
yeah,
Hey, the Phantom Menace, Jedi Republic. Take notes.
yep, yep.
Not a ton of intricacy here. I think it's only what 15, 18 minutes long.
All of them are around 15 to
Yeah.
20 minutes long. So
The
they're
Village
real.
Bride was a little longer than this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Village Bride is
I mean, that's one of the longer ones to be fair,
Village
but yeah.
Bride is beefy. Village Bride,
Yeah.
no matter how you view it, is just beefy.
Yeah.
Um,
But
it's
in
it's
anyways,
it's a heavy short.
yeah, very short and sweet, very
Yeah,
pared back, very stripped down.
yeah. Um, but anyway, let's get back to this. I I I love the relationship between Tajin and Dan. I really do. Um,
Those are their names. I did not catch the names. I have to
I will.
admit, I
Well,
did
I don't
not
think
catch the
Tajin has
names.
said the script, but Dan has said several times.
Oh yeah, Dan is said. Dan is said.
I'm pretty sure the guy's name is Tajin. The master's name is Tajin. Let's see. Master's name is yeah Tajin. 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 Yeah. Um, but no, I like the relationship between Tajin and Dan. Dan reminds me a lot of other apprentices we've seen in Star Wars. Your Ezra's, your Luke's, your Anakin's, because you can see, and this is what I love about him. You can see that he wants to get into the action. He wants to be the Jedi as their, as Luke says in the Last Jedi, at the height of their power, the Jedi were deified. He wants to be the Jedi hero who walks in with a laser sword and faces down the bad guys, and uh, and saves the day. But Tajin knows, because Tajin is a wise man, that that's not what the Jedi are, and that's never what the Jedi were supposed to be.
Yeah.
Um, and it's interesting to see that dynamic play out even hundreds of years before the Jedi lose their way and they become these laser sword wielding maniacs who come in and save the day and cut off a few arms and then leave. This
Yeah,
is very much not that.
it's a very much more balanced approach. You're absolutely right. I really love as you said, yeah, the relationship. The dynamic of the young, eager apprentice wants to go in, fight the bad guys, fight the Sith, chop some arms off, use the Force, and the master who has to, teach them, hey, not everything's like that. You have to be patient. There's more to being there's more to being a Jedi than wielding a laser sword.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, let's go down to the planet. I believe the planet's called Haba, though I'm not
Yeah,
sure about
Haba.
that.
Habo,
Um,
maybe Haba. I don't know.
let
I'm not exactly sure.
um let's look at it. I should have done this research before, but let's see. It is um Habbo.
Pardon?
Habbo.
Hobbit. Okay.
Yeah. So they land on Habbo, and they talk with some of the locals. And what I really love about this planet, and the brief glimpses we see of the villagers on this planet, is that this planet seems extremely in balance. This planet seems very much a light side planet. It seems like, everybody's living there peacefully. This is not a planet where a Sith would conventionally come. This is not a planet that harbors the dark side a lot.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely
and it
not.
puts us off guard for when we finally meet the Elder,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I think is fascinating.
Not too much for me to say about the planet, the village. I think it's just really interesting. I guess I can touch on this now. The difference in animation between the two, between the Village Bride and the Elder. Obviously, we can talk about this more later at the end, but I think in the Elder, as opposed to in the Village Bride, they're both pretty simplistic in some ways, but the Village Bride, it's really rich, really colorful. Every single scene is like an amazing work of visual art, and then I mean, I guess the same could be said and should be said um, for the Elder, but it's so much more spare by comparison. It's so
Yeah,
much
it's very
it's so much
simple.
less vibrant. It's so simple, and yet there's still so much detail, and you can clearly see the detail, the life that has been breathed into the people and their faces, and all the craft that has gone into that. And I'm really a big fan of how human centric the animation of this one is.
It
It's really a unique style, and I'm a big fan of it. At least it's unique within Star Wars.
the animation is truly something else, and I think the story in The Village Bride is very good. But I think the animation is better in, or not better, but like I like the animation a little bit more in The Village Bride, but I like the dialogue a bit better in The Elder. The animation in The Village Bride is very much like it will take every frame it feels like it needs to show you this vivid, picturesque planet.
Yeah,
Whereas the
absolutely.
Elder, it is like, you have the planet and it's beautiful and it is vivid, but what does most of the talking is the dialogue. The dialogue for me sells this thing the entire way. Because there is high risk, and I'm telling you high risk, of executing this very goofily. This
Yeah,
executed
definitely.
this executed poorly could be very goofy, but it is fantastically executed, and so it's not just not goofy, it's just very also insightful. It feels very purposeful. Everything feels like there for a reason.
Yeah, I think both the visual style of the Village Bride and the visual style of the Elder for me are both phenomenal. I think, as you were getting at, the difference to me is that in the Village Bride, everything is kind of a part of the show. It's a part of what is being brought to the forefront. Every little detail, the landscapes, the skies, all the colors, it's all so rich and it's all so vibrant. And then you compare that to the Elder, where all the backdrops, everything that is not the absolute essentials might as well just be blank canvas. And I don't mean to say that it's ugly or that it's bad. I think it's great, but I think it does a wonderful job of really, really focusing in on the characters and the details where they matter the absolute most. And it's a
Yeah.
really interesting choice.
I think probably my favorite part of this short, honestly, for me, is not what is said, but what isn't.
Oh, how so?
There's so much that's left unsaid. There's so much mystery to this short. Like, obviously, I've watched this a few times, and obviously, the first questions you want to ask are, you know, who is this guy? Who is the Elder? Why was he there? Where was he from? Where did he get that ship? and it's very interesting because it asks all those questions, but unlike some Star Wars things, it's like it never asks you to want to know the answer. It just floats the questions out there and just lets you have them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one thing that is really appealing to me about these shorts is that they're not so, I mean, for better or for worse, Star Wars now, everything is so interconnected. It's a tapestry, you might say. Um, you
The
know,
rumor
if
is, believe it or not, the rumor is if you say that two more times, Alden Diaz will appear.
I was gonna say shout out Alden Diaz. It's a tapestry. Everything is so interwoven. It's 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 so refreshing. That's probably a word I'm going to be using a lot to describe Visions. But I don't know about you, Eli, but I found it really refreshing to just be able to go in with something that really, there's no strings attaching it to anything else. There's no preconceived notions or rules really that it has to play by. And that's part of what makes it so good, is that they can kind of let the plot kind of fade into the background some, and really just give you a more surreal experience,
Yeah,
one that's more focused on the messages and the feelings rather than we need this character to be here at this point, and then
yeah.
this has to set up to tie into this novel, and I love that about Star Wars, but it's really refreshing, as are many things in Visions.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree, and here's one of the things that I think you said that I agree with the most, which is that, and you made a really great point here about getting different voices in here. Like the reason that these are all so different, at least in my opinion, is because these are people who haven't had the chance to tell their stories. Most of the production of Star Wars has been Americans and British people, and most of them have been white. Let's be real. Uh, and it's only now in the last few years that we've been getting more diverse Star Wars creators. But we've never had a full Star Wars slate of things produced by people, produced by people from Japan. We've never had that. We've
Yeah,
never had that from any country other than the U.S. and Britain.
yeah, it's really cool to see them just bring all the different styles and sensibilities.
And what's even more exciting is that Vision Season 2 um, is going to go to more cultures. We're still seeing Japan, but we are also going to Spain, Ireland, India, South Africa, Chile. I think maybe even France too. I might be wrong about France, but like again, all of these cultures who have never gotten to tell their own Star Wars stories are finally getting the chance to tell them, and that's what excites me about the second season of Visions and why I think Visions overall is such a great project because it allows those voices who haven't had the chance to tell their Star Wars stories to now do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think yeah, since we're talking about the style now and everything, um, I just think I absolutely love, and I'm really thrilled um, that Star Wars is continuing with Visions. Just I think the combination of all these different animators, these different creatives with different styles and different strengths to contribute, kind of making their own interpretations of Star Wars's themes, Star Wars's visual language, Star Wars's kind of rich, rich history at this point, and everything that's been built up. I'm absolutely thrilled to see where it goes. It's pretty incredible, I think.
Yeah.
Okay,
Should we get to the old man, the
yeah.
elder?
The old man. This is the elder. This is the meat and potatoes
Yeah,
of
this
this
is the
episode, I think.
interesting. I have never been so like the elder just has this intriguing way about him that you hear him speak two words and you automatically want to know everything about him. Um,
Absolutely. I think I mean, he's just so unsettling. It's such a breath of fresh air for Star Wars to have this kind of villain. He's both, he's neither sinister, he's neither completely sinister, nor is he completely goofy. Um, and I think it was really offbeat for Star Wars to have something like this kind of jolly, rambling, laughing old man who's also completely murderous, and he's got that look on his eye, where he's like, "I'm a Sith,
Yeah.
like
But
I
he's
can
not,
only."
and the great balance they strike is he's not mustache twirling. He doesn't
No, no,
feel
he's absolutely
mustache
not.
twirling. He feels very, he just feels like he is a man who thinks he knows best. He is wrong, but he feels like the Jedi are wrong, the Sith are wrong, and that he has his own path to take, which is still the dark side. But he raises some interesting points about the Sith. That the Sith are too obsessed with. It almost seems like in the way that that the Jedi are portrayed as wandering samurai trying to do good in the galaxy. It almost feels like that's the opposite for the Elder. It feels
Just
like it feels like he's this wandering terror.
yeah, he's just wandering around causing chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um. He,
absolutely.
the Sith, he says, are were too focused on bringing each other down, and I think he thought that he needed to use the dark side in a more solitary manner. Which, let's be real, he figured out the dark side because the dark side doesn't work with cooperation. It just doesn't. That's antithetical to everything that dark side stands for. So he is very much like what the dark side is supposed to be.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. Um, let's see. Yeah. He's also just has so many playful lines. He seems to be very like when Dan confronts him, it's about the lack of challenge he's getting and how it's really easy for him, and that he's hoping for the master. It's not going to be so easy for him. Um, I will give it to this guy. He's not arrogant. Not sorry. He's not mustache twirling, but he is damn arrogant, and I think that proves to be his downfall very much. And the way he conducts himself is just really interesting. He has these they're not even lightsabers. They're like katanas.
light katanas. They're light
Yeah, that's the
katanas.
best. That's the best way I can describe them, and they're so interesting. And the duel is so. It's not this epic dramatic sword fight. It's this dignified, and I'm talking about Dan, but I'm also really talking about the duel with Tajin and the Elder. It's this dignified. It's a few strikes. It's not about who can get the most strikes in. It's about placing the strikes exactly in the right places to try and it's about quality over quantity, very much.
Absolutely, absolutely, it is. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of in a weird way, it is reminiscent of the Tartakovsky Clone Wars, and yet at the same time, it's the inverse
Yeah, I can
of
see
that,
that.
where the Clone Wars, obviously, it's a both very, very stylized, very, very kind of dramatic, much more about evoking the feeling of what's happening rather than actually trying to show it. Um, and yet, the Tartakovsky is this, when the lightsabers go, it's just these this swirling just ball of speed and energy and craziness. And here it's so pared back, and yet that just makes every single strike and every single movement that much more impactful.
I think of the Kurosawa, like the moments that I feel like are the most Kurosawa Star Wars stuff, like Obi-Wan and Vader's duel in A New Hope. Very
Yeah,
much feels like that. Um, Obi-Wan and Maul's duel in Twin Suns. Very very Kurosawa, and obviously I'd be I would be totally missing something if I didn't mention the Jedi, Chapter 13 of The Mandalorian, which is basically a Kurosawa movie, but it's Star Wars. And the duel between Ahsoka and the Magistrate, which is peak like Kurosawa inspiration and all that in the forest and this very mystical energy binding it all together. Um, yeah. Um, we haven't talked about this. First of all, I do want to say that so I've watched both these shorts. Both of them, in both of them, people say they have a bad feeling about this. Did you notice that?
I did notice that, yes.
Tajin says he has a bad feeling about this. Um, let's talk about the Sith ship. So they find his ship before they confront the Elder. They find his ship, and and Tajin says that it's like some Sith ships that he's seen in Hollows. And obviously, we have the question: where did he get that ship? And it's those questions that really intrigue me about, like, who is this guy and what's his story? But to have those questions lingering in the back of your mind with this is just really fascinating for me because, again, you don't need to know the answers, but you're wondering them.
I just think it's really liberating in a way to not have to know the answers.
Yes, I would say I definitely would say that. Yeah. I mean, it's liberating to a point. Like, I feel like it's kind of liberating for me, and it's also kind of frustrating for me. Not because I don't like it; it's just because my brain is just constantly demanding. I'm like, oh, I need to see the backstory of that. But
Yeah,
but but the duel between Tajin and the Elder is just something else because Tajin does seem like your archetypal Jedi. He
yeah,
seems wise and strong and everything that he needs to be, and patient. And the Elder, like, especially with his dueling, seems like this animal. He's not really even a Sith.
yeah,
He's not really even a person. He is
yeah,
this animal.
yeah. He goes it's incredible. He seems almost feral. And one thing, going back to how in this it's very pared back. The number of just the number of strikes, the amount of time the duel takes, it's got to be one of the lowest of any duels in Star Wars.
Absolutely.
It's for me, it's just the fact that from the very beginning, against even the Elder against Dan, from the very beginning, that very first strike, like it's like he really genuinely wants to kill him and thinks that he can immediately kill him, and that's something that I think is not the case for a lot of duels in Star Wars. It's just different that way.
Yeah, it's not choreographed sword fighting. It feels very realistic. And sometimes we like the choreographed sword fighting. We do. It makes some of the greatest duels in Star Wars, but it's interesting to see this other approach to it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And then after he died, the last thing he did, the Elder before he died, was blow up the Sith ship he came in, which was smart because it conceals the mystery for the story, and also it prevents Dan and Tajin from figuring out where he came from. But I want to get to this quote. I mean, we can talk about Tajin's monologue at the end a lot, but here's a quote I pull out. Here's a quote I pulled out. What defeated the Elder in the end was not me, but time. He couldn't win against the weakness that comes with age. No matter how powerful you become, know it will not last forever. I love what this says about control, like especially about control. Like you can have all the controlling instincts in the world in the galaxy, but you can only control things to a point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Eventually your time will run out, and it's about what you choose to do with the power you have that really counts. Because the Elder
Yeah,
was trying to use power that he didn't have.
yeah, he was. That's
And Tajin, I feel like, was very acutely aware of his power, and he used it to greater effect.
yeah,
And by the way, the Elder even admits it. He says that
yeah,
that had he been at his full power, had he been younger, the fight again, like he would have been even more excited about the fight against Tajin. And Tajin said, yeah, had he been younger, had he had a had he had a bit more power in his reserve to do something with, then that fight might have ended very differently.
Yeah. And yet it's interesting. I just think it's a very different relationship with power and power as a concept than a lot of Star Wars, where he's kind of openly admitting, "Oh, I'm not what I used to be." Like I don't have as much power, and yet the Elder still goes for it and still tries to take down this Jedi, and yet it seems almost like some attempt, some obviously in vain attempt to recapture his youth and his own power um, by trying to strip it from Tajin.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, let's see. What else? Um, yeah, and especially like I drew a lot of comparisons to Darth Plagueis. Darth Plagueis wanted to hold on to power forever, but that's just not how it works. You can't hold on to your power forever. It needs to it power very much in this it is portrayed like it's a big game of like it's a big game of hot potato. Like it gets passed along. Like some people have more at some points, but it's always going to get passed along. And if you have it at the right moment, if you have the right amount at the right moment, not to quantify this too much because again, it's not about how much you have, but it's about how strong your skills are and about how much you've trained and about how much you're open to the force. Um, it's you will have the will and the strength to do what you need to. I think
Yeah,
this raises a lot of really fascinating um, questions and themes that are definitely extremely Star Wars, but like they're also extremely new and they're extremely like, oh, these are takes on Star Wars themes that we've never really taken on before.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
do you want to go to the Village Bride?
I was just gonna give my
Oh, absolutely. Go
overall
ahead.
thoughts.
Yeah.
Okay. My overall thoughts on this episode. I think it had incredible action. Um, it was striking. It was urgent. It was really incredible. How they kind of did so much with so little. You could say the Elder, very unique and unnerving villain. Absolutely loved him. Absolutely loved the animation style. Um, the very kind of minimalist story. I wasn't a fan of it at first, but as we've kind of discussed and talked through it, I have to say I was a fan of that as well. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this episode. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I also really love this short. It's fantastic. Um, it's like both of these shorts are probably towards the top of my rankings. I don't think either of them are my favorite. The twins is, or my second favorite. That would be the Ninth Jedi. Um, but they're both like I think of the six we're watching. I think these two are actually two of my favorite. Um, and the Elder is absolutely it's so foreboding, it's so mysterious, and it really lends itself well to that vibe. And it feels like it can say a lot in so few words. And it has this interesting magnetic like appeal to it. Um, but let's go to the Village Bride. The
All right, the
Village
Village Bride.
The Village Bride, which is episode 4 uh, of uh, of Visions. Give me a second. In The Village Bride, we follow an exiled Jedi after Order 66, a Jedi who survived Order 66. Her name is F. Um, uh, she meets up with a friend named Valko, um, and they find this couple named Asu and Haru. Um, Asu and Haru are getting married, and um, they are doing all of these traditional ceremonies that are practiced on this planet. On the planet, what planet is this? Fuck. Is there not a planet that's Kelia? The planet Kelia. Um, on planet Kelia, they're doing all these traditional things that are custom for Kelian weddings. Um, and it's all very peaceful. The planet seems very in balance with the Force. They use a version of the Force called, what is it called? Shoot,
Wait, I have it.
Magina.
Magina, yeah.
Magina.
Are you sure it's not
Um,
Magina?
I think it's. I know. I think it is Magina. Never mind. Magina. Um, and it's clear that they have some connection with the Force. But then at dinner that night, it's revealed that the bride, Haru, is the granddaughter of the village chieftain. After the Clone Wars, the Separatists came in the Clone Wars. The Separatists came to the planet of Kelia and took a ton of their resources, and then they left their battle droids behind, voiced by, of course, the incredible Matthew Wood. Um, uh, and raiders came to the planet, reprogrammed the battle droids to serve them, and basically they made a deal with the village chief. They would take him away, and the village would be safe from them. Uh, but Haru, the village chieftain's granddaughter, offered herself up instead, and it's revealed that this exchange is going to take place the day after the wedding. So what once was this joyful celebration, was viewed as this joyful celebration, is now this last hurrah uh, before this woman loses her life and her husband, and this man loses his wife. She'll just be gone. Um, and F notices this, and Valko highly encourages her. She's like, this woman a lot reminds me of you, and clearly the goal is for F to help them somehow. Haru talks at dinner with her sister Saku. Saku can't believe that this is happening, and she wants to try and stage some sort of revolt, and Haru is very resistant to that idea. She's like, "Don't. We've we've done everything we can. There's no use doing this." The next morning, the raiders arrive, and the leader of the raiders um, uh, reveals that they caught Saku trying to set up an assassination attempt of sorts on them. And they almost kill her if not for F's force usage of the Force to stop the blaster bolt in midair, a la Kylo Ren in The Force Awakens, um, uh, and stop the blaster bolt in midair. F then saves the village from the battle droids along with Valko, who shoots the droids from the top, and the village is saved. All the raiders are and battle droids. All the raiders are killed and battle droids destroyed, and F moves on to her next adventure. You want to get into this?
Yeah, let's.
Okay, so the fortune cookie is. I'm just making sure you're still paying attention. The studio who did The Village Bride was Kinema Citrus.
Full name.
Cool name, and I love all of these characters. I frankly love a lot of like all of these characters are so dynamic. I think F is a badass, and I love her so much.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. I think there's some cool characters here. I'm definitely not as big a fan of kind of the characters and the plot and the actual kind of nitty gritty of this episode, but I still think it's pretty fantastic in terms of what it delivers in terms of bringing something fresh and new to Star Wars.
Yeah, it's really I think it's and I love the also the detail that she wears a face mask at the beginning.
Yeah, and then she takes that. When does she take that off?
I think when she rescues everybody at the end of the
Doesn't
short.
she cuts it off at some point along with her braid?
It's been a while. Let's see. Um. Oh, it's at dawn when yeah, it's when she's I'm just looking at the Wikipedia page. It's when she's confronting the Raiders. Um. No, this is I'm glad you noticed that she cut off her Padawan braid because I didn't notice that actually. Um. And this does feel like a very she's lost her way after the Jedi fell, and I think Falco knew this, and I think Falco knew that there was this problem that was waiting to be solved by a Jedi, and that he could kill two birds with one stone. He could get F to be the Jedi that she once was, and he could save this innocent village from a terrible fate.
Yep.
And it's it's just really fascinating. I'm gonna say about the face mask when she takes it off, when she cuts it off. Obviously, she's very much hiding something at the beginning. She's very much hiding who she is at the beginning, and by taking it off, she is letting her true self out. She's letting her. It is a story, a la Book of Boba, a la Fallen Order, of like self discovery, and finding yourself. Um, so you want to? I actually also like to talk about. So you know how they're like connected to the living energy of the planet. This is really
Yeah.
cool. I really love this. I think it's really interesting that like they're talking about like they talk about their planet parents becoming one with the planet, which sounds an awful lot like one with the Force.
Yeah.
Um, we see a very different side of the Force, and I'm always fascinated by seeing non Jedi, non Sith sides of the Force.
Me too. It definitely felt like there had been at least some inspiration by maybe Zenoma Sikot, and kind of the sentient planet
Yeah.
from Legends and the Yuzhan Vong, and then also, of course, the father, the son, the daughter, their planet. What's that planet's name in the Clone Wars? I can't remember.
Mortis.
Mortis, yeah, that's one. It definitely had a little bit of a Mortis inspired
Yeah.
vibe to it.
I also think that there also could be a little inspiration. I looked this up into Shintoism, which is one of the main religions in Japan. A bunch of their traditions on weddings are decently similar to the traditions that the Keelians use. They're not identical, but I can see where some of the traditions could have come from. Like they ask permission from the gods, and they ask permission from the planet in this.
Yeah.
And the wedding also
the permission with the planet and the sorry, go ahead. But
I was
just
gonna
the
say also.
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say the wedding being such a solemn affair and not really a joyous affair. I mean, again, that could absolutely be because they know what's gonna happen to her, but I think it's also a reflection of the different cultural meaning of a wedding in the United States and in Japan.
Yeah.
Um,
It well could be.
what were
Well
you
could
gonna
be.
say?
I was just gonna say I think yeah, the idea of asking the planet for permission, having that kind of reverence for nature and for the planet, as is pointed out by the Jedi. It's unfortunately rare in American culture, but it's cool to see when that's brought in from another perspective. Absolutely, I agree.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of just interesting Force stuff in this. Uh, and I love the conflict that between Haru and Saku. I really do. I love the conflict because I can totally identify with both of them. I can totally identify with Haru giving up hope and saying there's nothing we can do at this point, and Saku who wants to keep fighting. Saku seems like a very like one of those very revolutionary characters, like a Saw Gerrera, like a Chem Syndulla, um, that we've seen in Star Wars. And she very much fits a mold of a character I'm very used to in Star Wars, and I liked seeing that again.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely agree. I mean, what do you think of the? Sorry, I just had a brain lapse. What do you think of the main conflict here with the Raiders?
I think it's a really interesting like I think it's a really interesting choice of villain. You know, they're not threatening to the Jedi to F, but they are threatening to the village, and there's these levels
Yeah,
where no where F and Valko take on all of the Raiders by themselves, and that definitely could not have happened without them there. So they're incredibly threatening and they're incredibly not at the same time, and I think that's very fascinating. Um, One of my favorite moments is when the head of the Raiders, Azuma, his name, asks F, "What are you, a monster?" And she goes, "I am a Jedi," and she ignites her lightsaber. I'm like, that is classic Star Wars right there.
absolutely. Yeah,
Casting off your shackles, becoming the Jedi once again. That is you. That is her. I am a Jedi like my father before me. That is her Rey Skywalker. That is her. That is her moment of defiance of saying who she is. And I give an involuntary cheer when that happened, even though I knew it was going to happen. Um, it's a chilling moment. It's awesome. I love it so much.
yeah. I love it as well. Like that moment, that final fight, when she takes down the leader of the Raiders is just it's incredible, and it's so cool the way they mix that classic Star Wars with such a different style.
Yeah,
That kind of anime swordsman swordplay vibe of her going right through him almost imperceptibly fast, and then holding that pose at the end as he slowly falls
yeah.
to the ground. I don't know. It's pretty amazing. That was definitely a moment where I was like, wow, this
Yeah,
is
it's
something else.
the build up is very good. The payoff is freaking incredible. I love it
Yeah.
so much. Um, uh, but anything else to say about Village Bride? Overall thoughts?
No, his overall thoughts for me. I think this episode and I would rate it about the same as the Elder, but for very different reasons. I think I honestly wasn't a huge fan of the plot, the story of this one. Some of the way that the dialogue, some of the characters, I thought it was a lot of it was pretty dramatic. And I think that's undeniably just the style of it. It's a little bit more over the top at the times, dramatic. But it just didn't really work for me as well. That being said, the soundtrack, the soundtrack scored by Kevin Perkin, absolutely phenomenal soundtrack, soaring melodies, amazing ethereal instrumentation, really incredible. And oh my gosh, the animation of this, I could rave about this animation for so long, but as I said before, it's so incredibly rich and vibrant that every single little moment, um, every single object, every single however insignificant a shot it may seem is just elevated into a work of art um, by the animation. And I think that that's something that where 2D animation really excels at, and live action and 3D animation, as good as it can be, it really doesn't compare. So I'm excited to see where 2D animation in Star Wars go. And I definitely felt the same way about Resistance. So it's cool to see that continue.
Yeah, I think that look, I think in terms of vision shorts, if I was making a tier list of this, in the S tier would be the twins, the Ninth Jedi, the Elder, and the Village Bride. And then everything else is below it. I love everything else, but those four, for me, like I think it for me it's the twins, then Ninth Jedi, then Elder, then Village Bride. But all of them can be interchangeable because really it's just a matter of preference for me at that point. They're all so incredibly visionary, and they all tell this new lens of Star Wars. And I love the Village Bride. It has that, it absolutely has the best cinematography of all four of all nine of them. I'd say the story is excellent. I think F is an excellent character, and it very like it feel the Elder is very minimalist, and the Village Bride is so much the opposite of that. These two are night and day, but they yin and yang off of each other so well. They balance each other out so well. Because both of them have these insightful messages. They just express it in different ways. Both of them have these beautiful, vivid scenes. They just express it in different ways. And I think we really chose two good shorts to really start a balance with. Yeah. But yeah, let's before we go, let's talk. Let's do everybody's favorite part of Star Wars in a Galaxy. That would be what you brought me today was worth 1/4 portion. That's right, 1/4 portion segment where we do something a little bit different. Today we thought we'd do a this month. So, I'll leave it to you, Jacob. What Star Wars will you recommend this month?
This month, I recommend the book, The Art of Star Wars Rebels. Eli, you actually gifted this incredible book to me for my birthday a couple years ago. It is one of my very favorite Star Wars books. Actually, I think it's kind of cool that is coinciding with us watching Visions, because obviously I'm a huge Rebels fan, and I'm especially a fan of the artwork and the aesthetic that they created. Although some of the animations a little clanky at times, Anakin looked a little worse for wear, but Yoda too, not as usual.
Don't insult Rebels Yoda.
Sprightly
Rebels Yoda
self.
is awesome.
I mean, Rebels Yoda as a character still awesome. His character is still awesome. The looks are polarizing to say the least, but I just love seeing the artwork, how it all came together. Especially as so much of Rebels, more than I had initially realized before reading this book, is really, really recycled and inspired and in homage to all of Ralph McQuarrie's original concept art for A New Hope. And it's so cool to see that all of that find a new home and find a way to be brought to life. And it's really cool how this book kind of tracks that and shows the journey that some of these ideas went on all the way from 1977, 1978, 1976, all the way to the 2010s.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a book that I recommend. And even if not, just going and looking at some of that artwork, if you can,
get the art of books.
Yeah, it's really
sequels,
illuminating.
Rogue One, Solo. I have all the movies. I know Jacob has Rebels. I think they're doing them of the Mandalorian. I think they might even be doing them for Visions at this point, but I'm not sure. That might just be a complete lie. But no, absolutely. If you have Twitter and don't follow Phil Shostak, who writes all that stuff, do. He's very insightful, and he tells a lot of great stories about the concept art of Star Wars. My recommendation, in a shock to literally nobody, is the latest Star Wars novel release, Shadow of the Sith by Adam Christopher. I was lucky enough to meet Mr. Christopher at Celebration. I actually, give me a second. I got this poster. I got this poster signed by by Adam Christopher. Super nice guy, but really a great writer. This is a story. This is a great story. You know, we have here. I'm looking at the poster. The story has some of the main characters on this poster. We have Luke here. We have Lando here. We have Kaiza with the mask of the ancient Sith Lord Exim Panshard on here. All great characters, all great stories. But really, let's be real, the best part of the story is the secondary villain, which is Mr. Ochi of Bestoon. We have an Ochi novel now, and this is all the Ochi content that all of my dozens of Ochi fans on the internet can, or of fellow Ochi fans on the internet. There are dozens of us. Will absolutely love diving into. This is episode 6.5. It it explains a lot of stuff that you've been wondering about backstory for episodes 7, 8, and 9. It is a fantastic read. It's a longer book, but it's just awesome. I'm trying to keep it as spoiler friendly as possible, but there's some incredible cameos in the book. There's some just breathtaking prose. I wouldn't recommend. I can't recommend Adam Christopher's Shadow of the Sith enough. He's great. I've already tweeted a lot of my thoughts about Shadow of the Sith on my own personal Twitter account at OchiFan327. Go check that out to see me absolutely melting over Shadow of the Sith, because it is the greatest Star Wars novel, there is Star Wars canon novel of all time. It really is. Until I read something better, it is.
All right. Eli said it. It's up to Lucasfilm to top it.
It's up to Lucasfilm to top it. Really is. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this episode of Star Wars in a Galaxy. Next week we are going to be doing the second half, the back half of our Visions coverage. Tatooine Rhapsody, Toby-Wan, Akakiri, La Pinocho. Boom! Very excited to talk about those four. Also, by the time this comes out, we will also be promoting something else. Epic Confrontation 3, baby! Alden, the iconoclast Diaz, versus Jared, the Dark Jedi Bachman Stubbs. It is a 5-rounder that is going to be one for the ages. If you haven't seen all of the madness going on Twitter, Alden and Jared are throwing shots at each other like nobody has seen. They're both ready for this battle, and I'm going to make it worth their while. We are so excited that premieres on July 25th, which I believe is a Tuesday. Am I wrong? No, it's a Monday. Never mind. It's a Monday. Whatever. Whoops. Also, absolutely, if you, this is coming out after this, or as it's happening, but if, you don't know, Jacob and I are making a guest appearance on the Great Nerd Herder podcast with our friends Boop and John, and we're going to be talking about The Bad Batch before we cover The Bad Batch on here in around a month, and we're so excited to talk about that with Boop and John, and we're so excited to be invited on by Nerd Herder, and we're really excited about that. Other than that, I think, follow us on Twitter at InAGalaxyPod. My personal is at OchiFan327. Our trivia Epic Confrontations account is at InAGalaxyTrivia. Instagram at Star Wars in a Galaxy. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts. We will be there. If we're not, email us at swinagalaxy@gmail.com. Leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify if you can. It really does help with our visibility. And until next time, may the Force be with you always.